Hey there everyone, we'd love for you to follow S News to catch this and future videos. Your support means the world to us, so please consider subscribing, liking and commenting. Thanks a bunch. At 1:43 a.m. on July 30th, 2025, the skies over Ukraine shook, not with thunder, but with war. From multiple directions, 320 Russian drones and 8 cruise missiles entered Ukrainian airspace in a coordinated surprise attack. Within minutes, the city of Kherson was completely destroyed. 32 civilians were killed instantly, 14 others were badly injured. A school, a church, a hospital, and hope itself were torn apart in the darkness, but the response came faster than anyone expected.
In those frantic moments, we dug through rubble with our bare hands, lighting the way with our phones. The once quiet sky echoed with sirens and screams.
When I received the full casualty report, I stared at the floor in silence for almost a minute before saying only one word: enough. This was more than an attack. It was a message, aimed not at military targets but at the heart of our nation. For the world watching, it was a shocking reminder. Russia wasn't just targeting Ukraine's defenses, it was targeting its people.
72 hours later, Ukraine struck back. Not with billion-dollar missiles, but with 270 homemade drones built from scrap parts, GPS trackers and recycled explosives. This wasn't just retaliation, it was humiliation. How did these drones manage to hit a Russian base without being detected? Could a weapon worth only a few $1,000s take down a defense system worth millions?
They think we're weak. Let's show them what desperation can do. There will be no ballistic missiles, no stealth bombers, no NATO support. Our response will come from our ingenuity and our will to survive.
The plan was bold, even desperate. 270 homemade drones, built from commercial drone motors, dashcams, cheap GPS units, and recycled explosives. They didn't need to be high-tech. Their strength was in numbers, in silence, in surprise. The target, the Sochi oil depot, a massive fueling hub supplying armored units near the southern front. Ukraine decided not just to respond, but to strike deep where it would hurt most. At 3:10 a.m. on August 2nd, 2025, while most of Sochi slept under the flicker of security floodlights, a threat Russia never expected appeared. Flying low to evade radar and exploiting gaps in electronic defenses, 270 crude-looking but deadly Ukrainian drones crossed into Russian airspace. Built entirely inside Ukraine from dashcams, refurbished domestic drone engines, modified GPS trackers, and explosives salvaged from unexploded Russian shells, each drone cost less than $600, yet together they carried millions of dollars worth of destruction.
At 3:12 a.m., the first drone slammed into fuel tank 14C, holding 280,000 barrels. The blast lit the coastline like sunrise. Secondary explosions followed within seconds, sending fireballs 200 feet into the air and shattering windows within a 2-mile radius. Security cameras caught Russian troops running in all directions, some without boots, others dragging badly burned comrades from the flames.
The drones kept coming for another 7 minutes, hitting fuel trucks, pump stations and the tank service yard, where at least 12 T-90 tanks were refueling. Several tanks exploded in place, flinging turrets and steel fragments like pieces of a giant grenade. By 3:19 a.m., radio communications from the depot went silent. Flares shot into the sky, but no help came. When Russian firefighters finally arrived at 3:43 a.m., the blaze was too massive to contain. The aftermath was devastating. Over 60% of the depot destroyed, tens of millions of gallons of fuel lost, dozens of troops killed or severely burned, and southern Russia's refueling operations crippled for days. Satellite images confirmed the destruction. 4 main fuel tanks reduced to molten metal, charred remains of T-90 tanks scattered in a blackened crater, and a once bustling depot burning beneath a 6,000-foot column of smoke. Russian state media stayed silent. No photos, no casualty reports, no Kremlin comment, but the silence spoke volumes.
International analysts quickly assessed the strike. A $150,000 swarm of low-cost drones had caused an estimated $320 million in direct damage and weeks of logistical paralysis for Russia's southern command. Inside Russia, confusion was palpable. The regional defense commander was replaced overnight. Fuel and ammunition were rushed into underground bunkers, slowing supply to frontline troops. But beyond the military disruption, the strike shattered something more vital: Russia's sense of territorial safety.
Sochi, long considered a safe zone, had just been hit in the heart. In only 7 minutes, the illusion of security was gone. Ukraine had proven that a battlefield isn't defined only by missiles and fighter jets, but by PVC pipes, ready-made cameras, and the will to strike the unstrikable. From that moment, every base, every depot, every gathering point inside Russia had to be considered vulnerable. Defending every inch of its vast territory would drain an already stretched army.
Around the world, military planners took notice, from Washington to Tokyo. The Sochi strike wasn't just about fuel and fire, it was about morale, message, and the power of improvised resistance. In modern war, the richest side doesn't always win. Sometimes the most inventive does. Within 4 days, the war had changed shape. Ciao! From the moment 320 Russian drones and missiles rained down on Kherson, killing 32 civilians, to the night 270 Ukrainian homemade drones turned Sochi into an inferno, the message was clear. War is no longer fought only with billion-dollar arsenals. It's fought with ingenuity, desperation, and precision.
Ukraine's strike didn't just burn fuel. It burned the illusion of distance, safety, and invincibility. And it forced a military giant to face an uncomfortable truth. Even its heart can be reached.
The drones weren't tools of terror. They were silent statements, launched without ceremony, delivering a message louder than any speech. If you burn our hospitals, we will burn your fuel.
What began as a desperate act of survival is now a blueprint for asymmetric resilience, turning consumer tech into battlefield dominance, inspiring armies and freedom movements far beyond Ukraine's borders. The battlefield has changed. So has the doctrine, and perhaps the nature of war itself. For now, the skies may be quiet again. But beneath that silence, the next generation of warfare is already in motion.
On July 14, 2025, the United States and Ukraine carried out a joint strike on a Russian military train carrying fuel and weapons. From the deck of a United States aircraft carrier, 9 FA-18 fighter jets roared into the sky.
Minutes later, 60 Ukrainian handmade, satellite-guided drones entered Russian airspace from the west. Their first target, a high-speed Russian weapons train carrying more than 1.2 million pounds of fuel and ammunition, enough to supply 3 missile bases under construction near the Arctic border.
In less than 8 minutes, the entire supply line was in flames. Then came the real blow. 3 brand-new Russian intercontinental ballistic missile facilities, worth over $4.5 billion, were turned into burning craters.
No survivors, no radar response, just silence and destruction.
Why did the United States and Ukraine strike together? Why now? And what message was this operation sending to the rest of the world? Let's find out.
In July 2025, American intelligence satellites began tracking a disturbing pattern deep in Russia's Far East. Over just 18 days, 3 massive military sites appeared, built in a rush, but heavily fortified. What made them unusual wasn't just their size, but their purpose. Each base held mobile launch platforms capable of firing intercontinental ballistic missiles with a range of over 6,500 miles, enough to hit Chicago in 27 minutes, or Washington, D.C. in 32. The discovery shook Pentagon analysts. These weren't symbolic threats. They were first-strike platforms, constructed with frightening speed and precision. Worse, Ukraine's defense ministry confirmed that mile-long Russian supply trains, loaded with fuel, high-grade warhead components, and electronic warfare systems, had been rolling non-stop for more than 2 weeks toward the new launch sites. Each shipment was valued at over $750 million, making that rail line the most expensive weapons pipeline since the Cold War. For both Washington and Kyiv, the message was clear. Russia wasn't preparing to defend itself. It was setting up for a preemptive strike that could bypass conventional warning systems. In a joint closed-door session, a U.S. general said bluntly, "If we wait, we won't be fighting in Eastern Europe. We'll be defending Seattle." For the first time in 2 decades, the continental United States faced a realistic possibility of being in direct range of a modern Russian ICBM corridor. And you know, it was all being built quietly, hidden under rail smoke, satellite blind spots, and the distraction of war elsewhere. The threat was real, and time was running out.
At 2:37 a.m. Moscow time, July 14, 2025, the dark skies over eastern Russia lit up, not with thunder but with the roar of jet engines and the hum of electronic warfare. The first of the 60 Ukrainian drones launched from hidden forward positions in western Ukraine and eastern Poland was small, homemade in appearance, but deadly in design. Each cost under $10,000, yet they breached Russia's multi-billion-dollar air defense network, jamming radar frequencies across a 50-kilometer arc. The air was alive with interference. Russia's early warning system went blind.
Flying just 300 feet above the treetops, 6 EA-18G Growlers lit up the spectrum, neutralizing Russia's early warning systems in just 72 seconds. When backup targeting radars tried to activate, they found themselves fed with false signals generated by the drones.
Then came the kill team, 9 FA-18 Super Hornets, each armed with AGM-154 joint standoff weapons and GBU-53/B Stormbreaker bombs locked onto the coordinates of the moving Russian weapons convoy. The train, designated Fuel and Munitions 14C, was barreling through a forested rail corridor at 70 miles per hour, hauling over 450,000 gallons of refined fuel, warhead units and mobile radar systems. Total estimated value over $2.3 billion.
The first bomb struck Car 7, which carried volatile oxidizers. The blast set off a chain reaction along the train, sending a 300-foot fireball into the sky and a shockwave that shattered windows in towns 15 miles away. Thermal satellite feeds showed the fire racing through the forest, burning 2.7 square kilometers in just 11 minutes. At ground zero, temperatures exceeded 2,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to vaporize steel.
At the same time, 6 F-15 Eagles overhead shot down 2 Russian interceptors and disabled a mobile SAM unit trying to activate east of the strike zone. From first jamming signal to final bomb drop, the mission lasted 7 minutes and 48 seconds. Not a single US or Ukrainian aircraft was lost. The Russian fuel and weapons train was completely destroyed. No salvage, no survivors near the impact site. It was a textbook example of modern asymmetric warfare. Precision, coordination, dominance. For Russia, it wasn't just a tactical loss, it was a strategic humiliation. For the US and Ukraine, it was a message. We still own the skies, but the operation wasn't over. The second phase of Operation Iron Flame targeted the 3 nearly complete Russian ICBM launch sites, just days from going live.
At 3:12 a.m., faint radar echoes over Khabarovsk Krai were too small to trigger alarms. It was the second American strike wave, 5 Super Hornets armed with GBU-57 bunker busters, 4 F-15E Strike Eagles, and another swarm of Ukrainian drones to light up targets and assess damage.
The first target, Site SoCal-17, was the command center. Intelligence showed a reinforced concrete dome housing nuclear targeting and communication systems. A GBU-31 penetrator bomb punched through 3 meters of steel-reinforced concrete, setting off a secondary explosion that vaporized the operations bunker and killed an estimated 43 personnel, including 2 senior missile technicians. Shock sensors nearby registered a blast equivalent to 1.5 tons of TNT.
Next was Site Contact 3, believed to house mobile missile launchers and stored warheads. Ukrainian drones fed live coordinates to incoming fighters. A direct hit on the main weapons depot ignited 14 tons of solid rocket fuel, triggering a chain reaction that blew the underground structure's roof apart. Flames shot 100 feet into the air, with tremors felt over 90 miles away in Blagoveshchensk.
The final and most shocking strike was at Site Krylo 9, the barracks and logistics hub. Over 200 Russian troops were stationed there. Believing they were weeks away from operational risk, the site had minimal air defenses and limited shelter. At 3:41 a.m., 3 precision-guided bombs hit the barracks complex. Satellite images captured the moment a 270-foot-long building collapsed inward, burying dozens inside. Fires raged for over 3 hours, and emergency teams couldn't land due to extreme heat and ongoing secondary blasts. Russian state media initially claimed minor infrastructure damage, but intercepted military communications told the truth. Heavy casualties, total loss of site integrity, and immediate evacuation orders. By dawn, all three bases were offline.
What had taken Russia 17 days and about $4.5 billion to build was reduced to ash in under 11 minutes of combat. American analysts called it a perfectly coordinated blitz.
Ukrainian officials called it a joint masterpiece.
For Moscow, it was a disaster, failing to intimidate the US and exposing the vulnerability of its newest nuclear weapons. Use a male voice with a New Yorker accent for